And this is the Dawg Pound. What in the world? Oh, I just still need some walk-on music. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got an incredible show for you today. I mean, we've got a hot subject that's going to get a lot hotter. And when you understand it, you're going to be a lot hotter about this subject yourself. The Right to Repair Act. We're going to talk about that today, but let's introduce the panel, starting with one of the most brilliant women, one of the most brilliant persons in the entire automobile world, maybe in the universe, my friend Jennifer Briggs.
Hey, Jim, how are you doing? I am glad to see you here today with your bright orange representing there.
Hey, I even made an orange backdrop. What do you think?
I love it. I'm partial.
You're like a construction cone today.
Oh, what can I say? And Executive Director, Vice President, General Counsel for the Massachusetts Auto Dealers Association, a man that has hired me multiple times as his keynote speaker. God bless him. My friend, Bob Okonewski. Hey, Bob.
How are we doing today?
Having the best day of my life. Right to Repair Act, Massachusetts, first state to adopt it into legislation, right?
Absolutely. And the only one.
The only one so far.
So far.
And living in Spain, my friend, the reinsurance expert, Max Zanin. Hello, Max.
Hey, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. You're in Spain today, correct?
Yes, sir.
When are you coming back stateside?
In 12 days.
12 days. You going to be in Pennsylvania or your place in New York?
Both.
You're going to be living in Pennsylvania and New York. Well, we're glad we're glad you're back. You know. Okay, and the BDC diva, a well-qualified woman in every aspect of automotive, my friend Bobbie Herron.
Thank you, Jim. I love your intros. If you could just follow me around and introduce me to everybody, that'd be so lovely.
Well, it's good. It's great to have friends like this. And okay, today we're going to be talking about the Right to Repair Act. Now, you know, the last couple of shows we've mentioned it. A lot of people said, Jim, you need to do an entire show on the Right to Repair Act. The Dawg Pound is on fire. The show's got all kinds of additional viewers, and people are asking me, what is the Right to Repair Act? How does it impact the automobile dealers? Well, that's why Bob's here today, amongst other things. The fact he's my personal friend and he's the leader of a great organization. Bob, it started in 2013, didn't it?
Well, actually started way before that. We had a legislation before us up at the State House for about 3 sessions where the Right to Repair folks were trying to get access to proprietary information and data from the manufacturers. That's how it really started. If you trace it back to the original bills here in New Jersey and elsewhere, they were really excursions into the realm of what the manufacturers had in terms of protected data, specs for equipment, tooling, etc. And over time, it got whittled down to the point of really what the focus was on the independent side was the need for diagnostic and repair information and tooling. And that's what the focus of the legislation that was eventually passed. We were very active as an association trying to bring the parties together, both on the manufacturer side and the independent right to repair side. Because as I testified before legislators all the time, is we are also independent repairers. When you think about it, the franchise dealer is not only working on the franchise automobiles, we are working on vehicles that we take in trade. We are working on vehicles that customers bring into us. And we have dealers across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who have signs up saying, we fix these range of automobiles that are just not the manufacturer.
Exactly. They'll fix any domestic or any import. They'll fix any domestic, any import. They have signs that say
many of them have that capability. Their techs have gone through the training. The dealers have purchased tools and software. And so, as I testified to legislators, we're we're not interested in shutting off any type of information because we need the information as well. And so we were very active trying to put together a law because, quite frankly, after seeing it die by the wayside for 3 sessions, the repair community was threatening to go with a ballot question on an initiative petition.
So they were going to take it to the public and put it on the ballot.
Yeah. So we felt, let's sit down, work out a deal, and I think we addressed the issue quite proficiently. We addressed the situation of all repairers having access to diagnostic repair information, tooling, the software, everything that they need. They have to pay for it. As I had to point out repeatedly over the years, dealers don't get anything for free. Dealers are paying the manufacturers to have access to the same information. In fact, in many cases, the dealers were paying more than what the independent community was getting it at. So as part of the legislation, we also got a price equity piece in there that no one is getting any special deals.
Nobody, not the manufactured affiliated franchises nor the independents.
Yeah, because we found out that we were getting, on the franchise side, there were oftentimes the franchisee was getting charged a higher price than what the independents were getting charged.
You're kidding.
No. And in fact, if you go back to some iterations of the bills, the manufacturers were actually looking for the creation of a situation of these authorized repair facilities where you would have independents designated as an authorized repair facility for an OEM.
That is the fear right now. Okay,
what was the fear 15 years ago?
The fear right now, and this is coming to reality, and we're going to take this into evolution. The evolution is, will independents be paid by manufacturers to perform warranty work that dealers are now being paid for? And there are legislators that would like to see that. So that is the evolution, and there are national bills coming out now. So I'm going to go back to Bob for more history on this. Okay, so in Massachusetts, you worked out that deal. It didn't go on the ballot. That was 2013.
Well, it did go on the ballot event because what happened is because the manufacturer dithered in really coming to the table, we needed to hit a hard deadline to get the bill into law, and we missed that by a week.
The manufacturers stalled.
Yeah.
So the bill went on the ballot.
We missed by a week getting it off the ballot. So we passed the law. We still had the ballot question. The manufacturers committed not to running any anti-ballot question ads. The right to repair folks did minimal ads. It passed with 90% of the vote. But we came back the following session and repassed the law that we had before the ballot question. Right? So we actually all came together and repassed into law what we all agreed on before the passing of the ballot question.
So one of our viewers just said, well, with 40 years, the shortage of technicians is going to make this happen. That came from the audience. But
I mean, I think that the technician shortages that's not specific to franchise shops.
No.
Technician shortages are across the spectrum here. And actually, that's one of the top issues going into 2022, looking at repair facilities, regardless of how you're licensed or franchised.
Well, let's talk about the evolution. Now, I want to get Massachusetts established, and then we'll go to national. So then what happened next, Bob? So
then what happened next is at the following NADA convention, the manufacturers through the alliance and the bulk of the independent repair community and the aftermarket parts companies came together on a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, in which the manufacturers committed to the repair and diagnostic portions of the right to repair law in Massachusetts on a national level. So
yes,
the manufacturers committed to using the Massachusetts law as it related to access.
So it became standard practice throughout the country.
Correct.
And originated, but then in November or October of this year, what happened?
So then in 2019, the right to repair people were making noises that they felt that they were not getting what they were entitled to in the law. And they were making all kinds of noises about they actually needed access to information that's in the telematics, because they felt that the manufacturers at some point would withhold information that's due them through the telematics.
Let's explain
and
telematics.
I kept pointing out to legislators that in the original right to repair law, we have a provision in there that the manufacturers cannot hide anything in the telematics.
Well, let's talk about I explain what telematics is. Some of the audience might not be.
So basically, the telematics is the information that is collected in the vehicle as it's operating. It's personal data. It could be vehicle data. It's information that's flowing between the vehicle, the dealer, the manufacturer. That is basically giving you insights into how the vehicle is operating, what repairs may be needed, where the vehicle is going. It could even be capturing personal information on where that person is driving the vehicle on a daily basis. It could be capturing just about anything that a computer can capture in the vehicle.
So
everything.
Anyway, that's the main concern right now. That General Motors put up $25 million to fight this. I mean,
so what happened? To answer your question, they were made these rumblings about having a ballot question fight again. The bill, we never went through a legislative process as we had in the past. They took it right to the ballot. We had one public hearing, which the Constitution says we have to have. It was in January of 20. We made our case. The right to repair folks made their case. They did not point to any situation in Massachusetts where a repairer was denied access to any type of tooling or diagnostic information during the time frame that the law was in place. They kept talking about how, well, the manufacturers are going to do this. The manufacturers are. We need to.
They were assuming that was going to happen, but it hadn't. There was no violation.
There's no violations, and it wasn't going to happen because the law already protected against it. What they really want, and what they kept hiding from everyone, going back 15 years, is they want that flow of information. They not only do they want the specs from the manufacturers on parts and tools and everything else, they want that flow of information so that they can access it, much like you have these problems now with Google and Apple and Microsoft. Twitter, Facebook, they're all doing these data collection activities to find out what it is you're looking for, where it is you're going, what it is you're buying. It's just there's so much data flowing in the system at all levels. The vehicle is just one piece of it, and the independent repairers want it.
Jennifer,
Jennifer's like
up and down. Jennifer's
she
jumping
can
up
die
and
in
down.
here.
Okay, Jennifer, jump in.
What is incredibly infuriating to me is that these advocates out here, and what Robert is saying is exactly what I've seen in all my research, in all of the understanding. And again, just for everybody watching, I work with independent repair facilities and franchise repair facilities. So I'm not playing favorites here. As a matter of fact, if you own a franchise store, I advocate having an offsite facility as well, just for your internals, if nothing else. But here's the thing that infuriates me about this is they are painting us out to be the bad guy and saying, oh, they're trying to hide all of this stuff and they're trying to control where consumers can repair their vehicles.
That's
and
not
that's
happening.
BS. What they really want is the preliminary data. That OBD2, you can plug that port in at a Jiffy Lube, at a Midas, at heck, My grandfather opened Eagle Tire and Service Repair, a tiny little independent in Wichita, Kansas, a gajillion, well, he's not a gajillion years old, but anyways, right? He can do those things on any vehicle after 1996. It's a federal requirement. What these guys want is they want the information ahead of time. Just like if you're a General Motors dealer and you get OnStar alerts about vehicle maintenance or about this or about that, those guys want the upflow data so that they can utilize it either for marketing or for whatever. It's not about protecting the consumer's right to an affordable repair. And I wish they would just say what they want instead of trying to make us as franchise dealers out to be bad guys, because it is BS.
Okay, she's just getting started, folks.
What she said.
That's a fact.
She's just getting started. I want to move this along because we've got 1 hour to get the crux of it.
Well, Jim,
Okay.
I would just add one quick point. There was probably,
Bob, yeah.
going back 15 years, there was probably some legitimate situations out there where manufacturers were at times making it difficult for the independent repairer to get that information, to get that tooling, but over time, all that stuff's available. You can buy it. You can get subscriptions.
I signed up for it before the show through OEMs.
So
I can get all of it.
So we passed the law to basically incorporate all that into statute. And from that point on, we have never heard of a specific instance, a legitimate instance of a manufacturer denying information or tooling from a repair independent repair facility.
Hey, Bob, we're not going to let the facts get in the way of a good legislation. I mean, come on. So I wanted to move this show along and get all the facts out there before we had the discussion. Last month, or month before last, actually, U.S. Representative Congressman Bobbie Rush. He's got a pretty colorful history. We'll talk about that too.
He sure does.
Yeah. Did you look it up, Bobbie?
Yeah.
Okay. Bobbie Rush. These Bobbies are all troublemakers.
I'm telling you.
Anyway, Bobbie Rush with a Y, congressman from Illinois, introduced a bill that is currently working its way through Congress. Whether it has a chance or not doesn't matter. They're going to keep doing it. You've already pulled the bill. Okay, so anyway, the National Right to Repair Act. Now, let me preface this. The National Right to Repair Act goes far beyond anything that Massachusetts has envisioned so far. I mean, it's all encompassing. Mm-hmm. And let me go back a month. Last month, Jim Farley at Ford did a call to the investors. The investors call, they have it regularly. And it was a slip up. I mean, I guarantee you he did not mean to say this, but he was indicating that Ford may spin off electric vehicles as their own separate company, which we know in all but 17 states are exempt from the franchise laws, including Massachusetts. Massachusetts has made exemptions for electric vehicles. Tesla specifically, and Lucid and Rivian are coming right behind, I guarantee you. So anyway, is Ford getting rid of the franchise system through creating a separate entity in electric vehicles? Now, at the same time, what if independent service facilities have the ability to do and be paid for warranty work and have the telematics, the ability to communicate, the tools to do it, and the training to do it, because the new bill requires the training available. Now, the training has not been available to the independents in the past. Bob, what's your take on what I just said?
Well, you covered a lot. Going back to when first Tesla came upon the scene 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I remember having conversations with reporters at Automotive News about how eventually one could see the manufacturers creating separate entities on EVs and other types of propulsion vehicles that are just not the ICE vehicles. as a way to get around the franchise.
They're calling it BEVs versus ICEs. ICE is internal combustion engines. BEVs are battery electric vehicles.
And if you remember about the time, I would say maybe 2 years after Tesla first popped up, there was a story in Automotive News about how Cadillac, they were trying to plan a separate franchise for Cadillac EVs in Europe that would bypass the franchise system the way they have it set up in Europe. And so it's not a shock that a manufacturer would try to figure out a way to get around the franchise system. When you look at what Ford has been trying to do with pre-ordering on Broncos and the Mach-E Mustangs and everything,
making them separate brands. The Lightning truck, the Bronco.
Yeah, they're trying to create a process that is away from the dealership operation, and where they can control pricing, they can control manufacturing, they can control inventory, the flow of inventory. And from their perspective, I could see how that could be more efficient, right? If you're talking about ripping up the environment to build these batteries for EVs, you don't want to be building excess EVs to sit on someone's lot, right? Because you spent a lot of time and money to dig up these minerals, get them manufactured into your batteries, get the batteries into the stream of commerce, get them into the vehicles, and you just don't want to waste those types of resources.
So we got two issues here
where it may make sense to try to control that process better, but there's a franchise system in place that they should respect, that statutes in all 50 states respect.
But if they defeat the franchise system by going around it, and the way it reads right now in all but 17 states, and I'm thinking that if any manufacturer creates a separate franchise, they will defeat the other 17 states. The other 17 states will fall in line, if it happens. Max, I know you got some opinion here. Let me get Max to comment.
Well, listen, this reminds me of Tesla, right? When they flew under the radar and broke the franchise laws and nobody paid attention.
They didn't break the franchise laws. They created new laws.
Right. By creating new laws, they demolished franchise laws. So they didn't break them, they detonated them.
In all but 17 states.
Right.
I wouldn't say that they detonate them. They saw carve-outs in certain states, and they got those carve-outs. The one thing I would adjust here, Jim, is that we don't have any carve-outs for the EVs. We have a ban in place in our law that all vehicles have to be sold through a dealer. And what Tesla has done here is get the Class 1 franchise dealer license to sell cars here. So they're respecting.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't understand that. Now, how many states have done that type of model?
The carve-outs?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. But I can think of, Colorado has carve-outs, New York, California. I believe Pennsylvania has some carve-outs. Ohio, maybe.
I was talking to Jim Appleton yesterday. They do not.
Okay, but I think they've had bills proposed there.
They've got bills right now that they're trying to break it. It's going.
And I think New York, I think has 5 in law, and I believe Tesla and Rivian and others are looking to get that number expanded.
So there's a big fight going on in especially the 17 holdout states, and then there are states like Massachusetts. I didn't quite understand. So they are operating under a franchise law in Massachusetts.
They are. They've got a franchise. They've got a dealer. A franchise dealer in Massachusetts has to get from the community what's called a Class 1 license where they're going to operate. So we're the only state, I believe, that allows licensing at the local level. We don't have state licensing. So in the communities that Tesla's operating, is they have a Class 1 license from those communities.
So what does it mean?
So they basically have a license to sell vehicles through their facilities with a Class 1 license. So when they first did this in Natick, Massachusetts, they got a Class 1 license from the town of Natick, and they opened up a building, if you will, to sell Teslas. They found out it wasn't working for them, and then they got the license moved so they could do it in the mall.
So let me be clear,
But I got to tell you, people can get all wound up about Tesla all they want. I don't, because I'm convinced come the end of the day, they will have their 2% market share that they have today.
That's what I've said all along. Absolutely.
As the legacy manufacturers get into this realm, all in 100%, which you'll see, 5 to 10 years down the line, they're gonna eat up the bulk of the marketplace as they do now. So the Teslas of the world, I firmly believe will still be your 2%, 3%.
Man, all due respect, I strongly disagree with that.
Right, I strongly disagree with that because the class 1 license in plain English is putting a lipstick on a pig, right? Because Tesla still sells cars direct to consumer. You can do it in a mall, you can do it on the roof of my house, right? You can do it from a
but licensing at the state level does not have anything to do about how you sell to your consumers. Like,
right.
And again,
that's why I disagree.
Okay, Bobbie's got the big screen.
That's why I disagree, though, is that I do think that eventually the legacy manufacturers get on board, but where they're already behind isn't just in the manufacturing of the vehicle. It's in the journey, the process the customer takes, and the way that they want to buy vehicles now. And I think it's going to take them a lot longer than that to figure that out and to be open to it. And truthfully, I think that's part of the reason we see these e-com reservations and these leads coming out. It's not necessarily about controlling pricing because it's still going through the dealer. They're still purchasing that vehicle at the dealer, and the dealer is still responsible for getting the allocation and servicing the customer. The variable is the control of the beginning.
Let's stay on the main subject. The main subject is the Right to Repair Act. And last week, a week before last, when Farley made all those, he's been tap dancing all over the place, retracting his statements. Oh, that's not what I meant. Yes, it was, in my opinion. But anyway, whether he meant it or not, and then we got the Right to Repair Act on the national basis. If that passes, and Bob, do you think they're going to keep trying? I mean, I don't know that the Bobbie Rush bill is going to go through, but do you think there's going to be another bill following it, until finally they get a hit?
Oh, sure. I think they will. I think, I think Mr. Rush's legislative proposal is a great attempt to throw as much stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, especially the parts of it that contradict each other.
Sure. Right. But at least at the same time, you don't have any initiative petition process at the national level where, a group can come together, propose something for the ballot, go get the signatures, and then it's an up and down vote on what they propose. Right. So there's no legislative give and take. There's no debate in the House or the Senate. No. There's just a vote by people who may or may not have a full understanding of what they're voting on. That's up to them to educate themselves on what they want to vote on. I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that at the congressional level, at least you will have people like NADA involved. You'll have aftermarket part companies. You'll have the Alliance and their legacy factory companies involved. You'll have scores and scores of interested parties having a say at the table to see what gets crafted.
I was interested in seeing who was on the other side. It was AutoZone, O'Reilly Auto Parts,
Pep Boys, all of them.
Pep Boys, all of them were the opposition.
Napa.
And then Napa. Then on the other side, here comes General Motors with $25 million opposing it. But I didn't see Ford putting any money into the fight. And that was interesting to me, that maybe they did, but I didn't see it. So
well, the things in, here we have, there's federal litigation now that the Alliance initiated right after the law passed in early November. So about a week or two after that, the Alliance initiated some litigation against the bill, against the law. It's been in federal court. They went through the trial. The judge has set March 7th for a decision on the litigation.
So it's coming really fast.
It'll be, we'll know, we'll hopefully know next week. I mean, the date has been moved several times since last year on a decision. At the last hearing a few weeks back, he set March 7th as the date. And depending on how that decision is made, who wins, who loses, you may or may not see an appeal.
Now, last July, President Biden signed into law some parts of right to repair. What was that all about?
Wasn't he more or less trying to address situations of on the electronic right to repair? Because we have that here too,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
So there was more on the high tech side, the Apple, the Samsung. You know, there's an allegation out there that certain parties always make that if you've got an Apple phone, you can only go to Apple to get it fixed, and if you go to a independent like phone fixer, that the information is withheld from them. And I can't speak to that. I'm not a.
That's not our.
That's not our fight here.
Wheelhouse. No.
Yeah, it's but we have that proposal here. It'll be in the legislature again for debate at some point. But we got a carve out in it for automobiles because of the right to repair law that already exists on the automotive side.
Well, see, I'm seeing the franchise laws still protect right to repair, and that if that falls by the wayside, there is nothing left to protect a dealer's franchise. The franchise laws, and and the NADA evidently is off the battlefield with this. I don't see that that's part of what's happening there.
Well, I think the best thing that arguments that we've used for 15 years on the franchise side, going back to even the beginning of the century when we did a major rewrite of our franchise law here, is that it's a very consumer friendly atmosphere. You have, back when I started, we had over 600 franchise dealers. We're down to 427. And you think about it, all those dealerships are competing with each other on a daily basis. So you have 34 dealers knocking heads against each other, as well as competing with the Toyotas, the Hondas, the Chevys, et cetera, et cetera. So a consumer, pre-pandemic, can virtually go to 427 stores looking for a vehicle that they need in their business, in their personal life, et cetera. You don't see that with Teslas of the world or the Rivians. Back before the pandemic, I believe it was I forget the report I saw, but 98% of new vehicles pre-pandemic were sold below MSRP, right? There are 0% Teslas sold below MSRP. There will be 0% Rivians sold below MSRP. So when you think about it, yeah, you can go on the internet and buy the car, and then you don't have any place to service it, because if you do have a problem with your Tesla, you're going to have to call them up. Maybe they'll send someone to your house. Maybe you'll get some roadside service, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you got dealerships all over the country that you can take your Ford to, you can take your Toyota to, your Honda to. So from the competitive point of view, the service point of view, I think the franchise system works great for the consumer. Now, pandemic-wise, we're having some issues on the supply chain. We're having some issues on inventory. I don't have to belabor the point that you see stories all the time.
I don't know if those supply chain issues are due to the pandemic, but
no, I'm saying you're seeing, supply issues, inventory issues. Right. You see dealers charging over MSRP. You're seeing less sales under MSRP because of certain volatile situations here.
Supply and demand.
But it's supply and demand. It's the marketplace at work.
And it is supply and demand. Yeah.
I'm finding it really interesting to hear this perspective. I just had somebody ask me on Facebook, "Oh, you're awful quiet this time." That's because I wouldn't often be able to have a conversation like this with you, Robert, about just hearing your perspective on what's happening.
You can always call me up and talk. I love talking.
I appreciate that. Careful.
Bob has been a friend of mine for a long, long time. I mean,
it's interesting though, because I agree with what Jennifer said about the data. It's, I looked up this information before, so I am getting targeted with ads for voting, and it is displayed as to prevent a monopoly on the technology and the data so that a consumer has the right to repair anywhere. And from one perspective, from the consumer, that is probably accurate. But behind the scenes, it is about the data, and that's dangerous. It's dangerous for the OEM to just have it too. I'm not saying it should just be one or the other, but it is a dangerous amount of data that we collect on people and their behavior and their activity.
There are safety and quality concerns with non-factory trained technicians working on those cars.
Well, and there's cybersecurity issues altogether, and that's the primary point of General Motors' lawsuit. Correct? Is the cybersecurity
of it?
Cybersecurity, yes.
It's the Alliance lawsuit, technically.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
But let me throw something. So, I say this to legislators all the time. As much as we advocate for the dealers, we're also all consumers, right? I have to buy a car. I own a cars. I buy a car from a dealership. I have an expectation as a consumer that while that car is under warranty, I can take that car to the dealer I got it at or anyone in that line make and get the car repaired, get it diagnosed. I have an expectation that I will be going to a shop that has trained techs. They have
There you go. A shop that has trained techs. You don't know how Pep Boys, you don't know any of these people are going to have.
And I'm not looking to disparage them. I have nothing bad to say about. I don't use them because I trust the dealer I go to have the techs to address whatever problem I have with the car. There are other consumers who don't have that type of confidence. As soon as the car gets out of warranty, they want to go to an independent shop. I get that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Already, over 70% of out-of-warranty repairs are done at independent facilities.
Exactly.
So really, this whole motion, we're not keeping anybody out of this game. They have the majority market share on out-of-warranty work. And the issue that I have with Mr. Rush's bill is that it is very conflicting. On page 6, it says the manufacturer does not have to share it does have to share outside of warranty and recall. So we don't have to share that info. But on page 5, it says we have to share it all and we can't decrypt it. So, but then at the bottom in section on cybersecurity, it does not prohibit them from putting any security in place, but you better give access to everybody, not encrypt it. Huh?
I knew you'd do this.
She's right. That's the thing.
This is smoke and mirrors. In my personal opinion, it is smoke and mirrors. There is not a problem. There are already laws in place. These independent repair facilities, if I pull up to one of them and need something done, whether it is on my F-150 or on something else, they can plug it in and they can see what needs to be done. That's not the issue, but they're
the independents can do that, Jennifer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me say here. What I'm looking at is if all of this prevails, and every Tom, Dick, and Pep Boys in the world can do warranty repairs, and I see that eventually it's going to be manufacturer warranty repairs. If that happens, and then the other end of the spectrum is we defeat the sales end of the franchise system by direct, and all the laws that have hit on these different states varying, they have one common thing. The car must be sold on the website. It must be sold on the website. And as a matter of fact, I just looked up the Lincoln Showroom of the Future, and it's a one-car showroom, and you can't buy that car. And the test drive is done with an Oculus, where you're basically
VR.
You got Game Boy test drives, So that is the vision that they have. So if the franchise law is broken on one end by selling the electric vehicles, and they have said that by 2030 all vehicles will be electric, but you know what? There's no law to that effect. Everybody assumed that, hey, there was a law that said that they had to go to a full electric. No, that's just conversation. Another political party comes into power and all that crap's out the window, So, I mean, there's no law that says we have to be fully electric by 2030. But every manufacturer, every one of them has said they will be fully electric by 2028.
Well, if you look at the manufacturer's perspective, I think the way they're looking at it is instead of dealing with the ever-shifting sands of the emissions and the fuel economy standards, it's just easier for them to go all in on something where they're not going to have to worry about getting 55 miles to the gallon on a fleet calculation, right? And you have Biden talking about jacking up even higher, over the next couple of years. And so I think the manufacturers have made a calculation that it's easier to get in the sandbox with the Democrats and the progressives and come up with a game plan to create vehicles that they don't have to worry about fossil fuels anymore. Is it realistic? Well, time will tell. But, some problems to point out is that, again, the batteries, where are we going to get all these minerals?
Where are we going to get the raw materials? And if every vehicle were electric by 2030, the entire power grid of the United States would collapse.
In its present,
We should get that together anyway.
Yeah, in its present condition, yes. And so I always ask the question, where is all this power going to come from? We don't have a plan in place nationally or even regionally. We're operate under the ISO New England here. Texas is the only state that operates under its own grid system, if you will.
We saw how that worked out.
And they've had problems. California has problems. It's so trying to project 100% EVs by knowing what we have now for a grid system, it just doesn't work. Maybe it would make more sense to transition ICE vehicle elimination with the progression of EVs, but to just simply say, all EVs may not be realistic.
There's no law at all. Bobbie, jump in here. I know you just.
It killed. We always.
You look like a little puppy cutting circles.
But I'm curious how we think the Right to Repair Act influences when these EVs come out, because I look at technicians right now, and I work with a lot of independent dealers, and a lot of them and their technicians have quality, educated, well-trained technicians who are more than capable of being OEM trained. I've met quite a few OEM trained technicians who are quite questionable. Where my concern comes in is when we start to get to things like EV vehicles, not just because of batteries, but because of data downloads. Imagine we have people like hacking cities with ransomware right now and shutting them down completely. Imagine what you could do with a vehicle like that. That's where I start to be concerned about.
The vehicle
and then some of the questions on your end, Bobbie, is how do you do the some of the repairs? If they're just software updates, if you're just sending a signal from the manufacturer to the vehicles. Do you really, the question will arise, to what extent do you need the dealership to do that on the service side? We've seen manufacturers do updates in that situation and bypass, there's no wrench, you're not changing oil, you're not replacing a transmission. It's simply a software update. And so, I was reading a couple of days ago, there was a bill filed in one of the states, was in West Virginia, where the dealers would get compensation for over-the-air repairs and updates. That where they're not touching a vehicle per se, but that's something that's going to have to be looked at too in these discussions with the manufacturers, the dealer councils. How are those repairs going to be handled, given the fact that dealers have invested, hundreds of thousands, in many cases, millions of dollars in their dealerships over time to be tech savvy, if you will, and prepared to fix cars, repair cars, diagnose cars.
So anyway, I'm thinking a terrorist on a bridge that is also a hacker can cause a major traffic pile up on any highway. Sitting on a bridge and shooting a signal.
A 22-year-old kid who's bored in his bedroom and as a hacker can cause a major problem. That's right. The thing. It doesn't, the way that the data is utilized versus how it's controlled, it's so crazy to me. You look at Congress and everybody talking about it, and you just think, God, do you even know how to use the internet? How are you in charge of this? It's embarrassing.
Max, have you got any conversation you want to bring into this conversation?
I mean, listen, the reason I brought up Tesla in the beginning is that dealers snoozed, and I'm going to go back to what I said. The franchise laws were crushed and detonated, and there is no going back. And after Tesla, there'll be Fisker, and after Fisker, there'll be Rivian, and after Rivian, there'll be Apple, and after
Listen, I got stock.
Right. So what I'm saying is that this Tesla,
and none of those companies provide a vehicle at a price point for the average American.
Correct. No. For now. But at this point, Tesla detonated the sales side of the franchise law. And this right to repair act is now taking care of the fixed ops side of the franchise law. So unless dealers together with
Max,
NADA,
that's what I've been saying, Max.
right, unless dealers together with NADA wake up, right, and put up a fight, you might as well turn in your franchise because it's worthless, right?
We
If
got
anybody
Max,
can sell a car
Max,
direct to
hang on a
consumer,
second, Max, slow down. We got warriors like Bob Okonewski who are fighting that fight.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got people fighting that fight. I'd like to see the national organization fighting a little harder, but
That's the thing. Do we have it nationally?
But I know a lot of the state executives like Bob, and they're putting up a hell of a fight.
I think that
Well, everyone seems to be
optimistic. I want to be optimistic and say they're putting up a hell of a fight, but I don't see it. I see that Tesla is crushing it, and every other direct-to-consumer electric OEM is going to do the same. And
because the consumers are buying into the propaganda.
But the best part is that it's going to be the traditional OEMs that are going to follow this model, like we talked about before, right? They're going to go with Bronco. They're going to go with Lightning, direct-to-consumer. They're going to do whatever it takes to overcome the franchise laws because they're under insane amount of pressure from shareholders in their corporations that are mesmerized with Tesla stock valuation.
Well,
2% of the sales, but they've already surpassed everybody. Did they pass Mercedes as the #1 luxury brand? I think they did. #2 for sure.
I don't want to take something to a political place. So let's not do that, pineapple. But let me just say this. I want you to think about when you're thinking about the OEM and the power that they have versus a company like Tesla. I want you to think about just how powerful Tesla can be with the data they have. They can relocate satellites for countries. We think we can keep up with them because we can build a car. What? Like, just let that sink in for a minute. We think that the OEM is going to be able to compete in 5 years. We think our lobbyists are going to outrun theirs. It's the craziest thing to me. The people that are progressive, regardless of political stance, that are progressive in this mindset have to be out there also advocating for these things if we don't want that to happen on a national level. And I'm not saying I want it to or not. I'm just saying that's the reality of it. We are up against mass technology companies and mass data companies that want to use it for things that are so much more than about buying a car. So of course,
much more than buying a car. Jennifer's jumping up and down over here. Jennifer, where's your thoughts right now?
I think I just want to just go back to what Bob said. I mean, there's already a law in place. The information that all facilities need is accessible to them. The new legislation that's been put in place actually doesn't even address recall and warranty. That says the OEM facilities get to keep that and they don't have to share that. So it's like, what are we talking about? We're talking about giving them access to data about consumers' utilization of a giant moving machine, right? And so here's the whole thing of it. They're kicking all of this up, and why? And yes, it does tie into EVs, but it ties into the fact, let's think about this from a business standpoint. And I know I've been talking about consumers, and again,
let me slow you down 1 second. EVs are mentioned in the new legislations because the biggest thing that coalition is afraid of.
Slid out and didn't actually have to adhere to the last go around.
Well, the reason the coalition is so concerned about the Right to Repair Act is they are afraid of the EV technology not being transferred, and that has a big part of it. Now continue on with that subject.
Well, from the standpoint here, as far as being able a right to repair, the whole intent behind this legislation is to give consumers access to affordable repairs. And I would like to see
that was the first thing it said in the law.
But where is it that they don't?
Because Jennifer's saying it's not changing the fact of warranty, which is where that number one issue would come in for that to actually make sense. If I can have my car repaired anywhere, but I can't have it repaired anywhere using the warranty, then what's the variable?
And if independent repair facilities already have 70% of all out of warranty work, what on earth are we're trying to solve?
They
for
want
a
the
problem that doesn't
30%.
exist.
They want the other 30%, and they want
But we're
access
the
to
ones that are
warranty.
trying to protect
They
consumers
want
from a
access to
monopoly.
warranty work. That is the evolution where they're heading with this thing.
And we're the big bad wolf.
They're the
ones who want
to be
100%
paid
share.
for warranty work. That has yet to be on the table, but believe me,
It's
that
gonna
is
be,
where
though.
it's headed. That's
Right?
where it's headed.
It has to be. Otherwise, what would be the, outside of the data and the behind the scenes, like what would be the frontline purpose of it? If I can still have my stuff done anywhere, I can still pull information from
As
anywhere.
Bob
Without
Okerlowski said a minute ago, there is no smoke, no fire under the smoke. I mean,
No.
the truth of the matter is, no, the public is not being mistreated.
So,
They didn't have an issue. There wasn't an issue or a violation.
The lobbyists on the other side of this, these right to repair people, are investing a lot of time and content to make it seem like there is an issue.
Their brand strategy is brilliant. I'm just going to tell you, I've been getting targeted with it for the last 2 months. And the way that the data is being used to project a lifestyle of choice, the illusion of choice, which does not already not exist in this, for instance, it's brilliant. And
well,
it's
Bob,
if you think about it, they need the data, they need the proprietary information from the manufacturers just to manufacture parts properly, replacement parts, whether you're talking hoods, fenders, whatever. You know, they need the spec. Instead of reverse engineering everything, which would be expensive, they want, and this goes back 15 years, they want all that data that the manufacturers use in manufacturing those parts. That's really what it comes down to when you're talking Napa, Pep Boys, all these others. I mean, that's and
so is it
there's
really
a
about
line that goes back to China too, where
is it really about dealers being against each other, or is it more about suppliers and the ability to negotiate contracts that carry a high gross profit? Because it feels a little to me like that makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Bob just brought up China. Where does China fall into this scenario, Bob?
Well, when you look at it, when we've always been debating this, there's a large influx of Chinese parts that flows through the system, not just here but around the world. And I put something on LinkedIn today and our Twitter about the impact of the Chinese factories on the EV marketplace in Europe. Right, and you see very little discussion of Chinese vehicles coming here, but when you look at what's going on with the Chinese factories, their impact worldwide is becoming more substantial every day.
But the Chinese has never brought a car ashore in the United States.
No, but I'm saying when you look at the discussion, though, they're a big part of the discussion elsewhere. So I'm just curious, when is that going to be brought up at some point here?
I remember 15 years ago when Malcolm Bricklin was trying to bring the Cherry cars into the U.S., if you recall, and I was the keynote speaker at the New Jersey Dealers Convention that year, and Malcolm was sitting right in the front row, and I said at that time, and I said, Chinese cars will never in my lifetime come ashore in the U.S. market, and Bob Sazuli was sitting right next to him, who's the only franchisee he had. I think he paid $250,000 for that franchise. I said, "Oh, you must be the head of the dealer council. The only dealer that bought the franchise." And it blew up. Number one, because he was Malcolm Bricklin, but other than that, it never happened. Chinese cars in crash tests in Russia were killing all occupants at a 5-mile-an-hour fixed barrier crash test. I mean, the quality wasn't there.
Jim, a substantial part of the European market is being served by China through Tesla. They're creating Teslas in China that's selling into Europe. My only point is,
say that again, Bob. Say that again.
There's a substantial segment of the European EV marketplace that's being served by Chinese Teslas. So my point is, we
Chinese
have all this
Tesla.
discussion about our legacy manufacturers, the legacy manufacturers that are part of the alliance that used to be part of global. We have yet at some point gotten to that hurdle of how are the Chinese companies going to be treated here, if ever, especially on the EV front.
I don't even know if we can go into that conversation with only 5 minutes left in the show.
5 minutes left in the show.
It's for a future. It's for a future
Right,
conversation.
right.
Bob, you're a troublemaker. You are just one troublemaker.
But if you're talking about trying to service an EV world, the Chinese are going to have a big say in that endeavor, I think.
Max, I see you jumping up and down over there. What do you got?
Listen, I don't know. This is above my pay grade, but instinctively, intuitively, I know that franchise laws are under attack, right? And dealers need to wake up, right, and understand that factory is not their friend. And while you can make as much money through your fixed ups, through your F&I products, and hopefully right into a right into a sunset when
you're talking like we're defeated. I don't know that we're defeated.
I don't think
Jennifer, we're 75% defeated. Right, because the amount of money between Tesla and Apple, right? Because nobody is talking about Apple here. This is a $3 trillion company. The amount of money they're gonna dump into making cars and selling them direct to consumer is going to be unprecedented. They're gonna make Tesla look like little boys.
Okay, now I hear.
I love it that you just called Tesla little boys. That's fantastic.
Unbelievable. Jennifer, you're still over there thinking. What do you got?
Here's what I want to leave anybody watching the show with. What is happening right now with these right to repair folks is they're doing a great job putting out on the political side of things what we would call propaganda. Right? So if you're going to combat it and they're making all of these claims that consumers cannot get affordable automotive repair with your facility, then you need to put a content strategy in place. It was funny. I reached out to Owen Moon at Fixed Ops Digital this morning and was like, hey, we're talking about Right to Repair Act. Like, what would you say is the most important thing for a dealer to do to be able to do this? And he says, well, they need to start talking about the training of their technicians, the tools that they have available. They need to be putting
recruiting of technicians, recruiting of we gotta have apprentice programs. We gotta create technicians.
Well, I mean, outside of that, the technician problem is an issue across the board, whether you're independent.
That's another show. That's another show. But you're right. You're right.
But we have got to be able to speak to the fact in a content strategy, regardless of whether it's paid media, on-site, off-site. We have got to be able to speak to the fact of why we do what we do, and we need to combat this illusion that it's not affordable for consumers to have their vehicles repaired at our facilities. Now, the other thing is, like, seriously start thinking about your time, because that's the one area I think that gives these independent facilities their 70% of out of warranty work is we're not prepared to be running multiple shifts or being able to operate our dispatch efficiently to squeeze as many hours out of our shops as possible.
Granted, getting an oil change at a franchise dealership is a nightmare, and you can pull into Valvoline and be out in 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, look at what Benstock's done. You don't have to pull into anywhere. You tell them.
I would take exception to that because if I'm getting an oil change, I'm also scheduling a tire rotation. I'm scheduling a review of the works. I'm getting other things done besides an oil change because I've invested money in my vehicle. I'm taking care of my vehicle. I'm going to get 15 years at least out of my vehicle.
I love it when Bob's fired up.
And for you to suggest that an oil change is a hassle, I just think you're looking at it upside down.
I love it when Bob's fired up.
It's an opportunity to reinvest in your vehicle. And
okay, so everybody. The clock just beat us to death on this. I got Bob fired up. He's going to go take a blood pressure pill. It's
117 over 70. Never move.
It's good. It's good.
You need some excitement in your life, okay? That's what I'm going to tell you.
Okay, the Right to Repair Act. Are the manufacturers going to defeat the franchise laws? Max says no. Bob says no way. Okay, it's been a heck of a good show. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Dawg Pound. The reruns are going to be all over. Replays are going to be all over social media. We got 50,000 views on my site last month. So people are watching these shows, and I want to thank you for being here, Jennifer Briggs, Bobbie Herron, Max Zanin, and especially Executive Director, General Counsel for the Massachusetts Auto Dealers Association, Bob Okanewski. Bob, thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Bob.
you.